I'd like to introduce the next speaker. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Kathleen Wolf. Kathy is a research social scientist at the College of Environment, University of Washington in Seattle. She's also affiliated with the U.S. Forest Service Pacific Northwest Research Station. Dr. Wolf's research explores the human dimensions of urban forestry and urban ecosystems. She's also worked professionally as a landscape architect and as an environmental planner. Kathy's professional mission is to discover, understand, and communicate human behavior and benefits as people experience nature in towns and cities. She has served with U.S. national organizations that promote nature in cities, such as the Transportation Research Board National Committee on Landscape and Environment, the Sustainable Sites Initiative, and the TKF Foundation. And anybody who has heard Kathy before knows that she's one of the leading people in this particular field. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Kathleen Wolf.
Hello, everyone. Oh, come on. You just had coffee. Hello, everyone. Hello. Yes. It is a great pleasure to be here and Keith, on behalf of Bartram Trees and all the other staff that have obviously put in so much work to carry off this event. Thank you. And I was told that there's a little change in the agenda. At lunchtime, this screen is going to open up and there'll be a tennis match, right? We're all set up for that. The work that I do has to do with social science, particularly environmental psychology. But what I'm going to do is share not so much just my work, but actually that which has come from a community of science from around the world. And it has to do with public health. It has to do with our wellness on an everyday basis as we experience trees, garden, parks in our everyday surroundings. And unfortunately, there are many people who go about their business, thousands, millions of people in the world who go about their business on a daily basis and really have no idea what this is that surrounds them and the benefit, the potential benefit that it provides. So while you are hearing a great deal about environmental services, ecosystem services that have more to do with ecological function, I think we have another valuable story to tell to bring collaborators, to bring potential funders, to bring those who don't think about trees and gardens and parks very much, but to bring them perhaps to this idea and perhaps to fund it. And sometimes when we talk about other environmental services, we know that there are many tools to capture this quiet work that goes on in our everyday surroundings and throughout our cities. And we've heard a bit about iTree already. We'll hear more later in the day, focusing on the canopy of the city. iTree, this is a very quick overview, and Dr. Dave Nowak, of course, will provide more detail as well as what we just heard about the City of London. But the essence of iTree is to understand the structure of the urban forest, to first know what the resource is on a systematic, comprehensive scale. And then to understand some of those functions that are provided by that forest, by that canopy. In some instances, for some of those functions, what is the value? What are the economic consequences, the costs and the benefits of the trees and the services that they provide? And finally, knowing all of that, better informed management decisions can be made. So while we might want to know about the distribution of different trees, we might want to know about the health of the trees, fundamentally, this is what iTree can do for any city. Structure, function, value, and management. And so now this is what I bring to this, is to talk about function in a little different way. And that is how people respond in terms of public health and wellness to the canopy, and to all of the structure within that canopy, the shrubs, the ground covers, and all of the plant materials. We know about improved air quality, an element of health, obviously, if there's less particulate matter in the air that we're breathing, as well as beneficial gas exchange. That's a good story or good news for people in cities. We also know about a bit about stormwater runoff, and how do we, perhaps, as we plan and plant trees in order to capture water, manage water, how might we insert into that system some of the elements that offer amenity and health benefits simultaneously. So that, a little different from the original program, my topic is To Your Good Health, Trees and Nature for Wellness. And what I will do, as I mentioned, is I will talk about a broad collection of studies that have been done that help us understand these health benefits, these health consequences. Many of you will know this from your own experiences, from those encounters that you've had with trees professionally, personally. But again, there are a number of people in our communities, and some of them have great influence with the opportunity to open up budgets, the opportunity to create policy, and they may not be as aware, self-aware of these sorts of things. It's important to start with a definition of health. In the States, United States, unfortunately, I think the focus of our definition of health is the absence of disease, treatment of disease, treatment of infirmity, treatment of injury. But the World Health Organization acknowledges that there's a broader set of dimensions, there's a broader set of needs to achieve health. And so science, evidence about environment is important. I use the term now metro nature. We don't have a good term that captures all of the different expressions of nature in the city. Trees, gardens, parks, with these interesting green infrastructure facilities that we're seeing, green walls, green roofs, urban agriculture. So I call that metro nature. Maybe there's a better term, maybe one you would prefer. Another thing as I'm talking is to remember that trees are not a panacea for the ills of our cities. They provide an increment of benefit. They're very important. They create space. They create positive places. But I think we also have to temper our enthusiasm at times and understand that there are other elements that we can contribute to and participate in with other professionals and other disciplines in our cities. Health, again, is a full spectrum. There are a full spectrum of influences on health. And at the center of that are those elements that are very personal to us, our age, gender, genetic propensities. But then there are broader, larger factors surrounding that have an influence on health. Lifestyle, community networks. We're learning that social connections with other people are essential for good health. If we're lonely, if we're isolated, there are propensities for certain diseases for people at different times in life. But the big blue band on the outside, the environmental conditions, that's what we're all here for today, is to talk about those places, those settings that we create by promoting and sustaining the urban forest that then encourage and augment other health factors and determinants in our lives. Community trees, urban forests, metro nature. We have scientific evidence. We have lots of scientific evidence. I'm not going to be portraying a lot of numbers, a lot of statistics. I will provide citations and a resource where you can go and find more of this information if you're interested. Mostly in this time remaining today, I'd like to leave an impression, a larger sense of what we know and what we can bring to the community discussions about urban forestry. So the story I'm going to use to convey this is cradle to grave. We have more than 40 years, about 40 years of evidence, scientific evidence about health benefits that humans gain from having nearby nature in the city. And there's this density now. The pace of this research is accelerating. There's a density, there's a critical mass of this work that rather than just shooting out bullet points, I'm finding we can start to tell this in terms of stories. So I'm going to use cradle to grave. From birth, from the earliest hours of our life, extending to those last final days, months, years, we have now evidence of the health benefit provided by trees, gardens, and parks. I don't know where all of you are in this spectrum. You can guess where I am. It's definitely over here on the right somewhere. Different opinions about that depending on who you talk to, my husband or my daughter. But anyway, the point is we now have scientific evidence markers of health benefits provided by nature throughout that lifetime spectrum. Let's start. First hours of birth. Study done by a colleague in the Forest Service, Jeff Donovan, published in 2011. Looking at canopy cover, looking at the presence of nature in proximity to those homes where women are pregnant, and finding a relationship with birth weight, healthier birth weight. That's profound. And now other studies in other places, Germany, Canada, Los Angeles, Spain, have found similar results. Relationship of healthy birth weight or healthy babies and the presence of green. So I was told you can't ask me questions, but I can ask you questions, right? Why is that important? Why is healthy birth weight a good thing for children? Anyone? Shout out. Reduces infant mortality. So there's health at that very early age, reduced mortality, perhaps increased health in those very early hours, and consider the costs associated with that if a child needs additional treatment after being born. What else?
Less impact on the mother with a healthy child.
Less impact on the mother. We don't know a lot about that from the research, but there is that possibility, perhaps the emotional connection and postpartum reaction with the child. Does anybody else hear the little birds up here? Here we have some nearby nature, unexpected. Anyone else? Effect of birth weight. Less chance of diabetes later in life. So that's some of the most current research is finding that conditions at birth, conditions at early age carry out throughout our life. Grade school, high school, cognitive capacity, but improved cognitive capacity with healthy birth weight and healthy early life, as well as middle age health. All right, we get a little older and I'm going to start moving around a little bit here. We get a little older, and as we have opportunity to be outdoors and play, very important to develop imagination, to pursue creativity, to start to learn how you work with others for shared effort or to shared purpose. Richard Louv has done a book, Last Child in the Woods. It's been a great influence in the States. I don't know if it's a common read here, but it really lays out the importance of having nature for young people, for children, and open free play. We get older, we have to move along, get into school, and in this classroom situation, we're coming to learn again that having nature is important. Views of nature, not the activity of a young child outdoors, but literally having a view of nature from the classroom is associated or has been associated with reduced stress and also with potential learning performance in classrooms. Here's one example. A study of high schools in the state of Michigan, which is in the upper Midwest of the states. And across numerous high schools, looking at these records of the students and finding with a view of nature from the classroom, views, and from the cafeteria, you see then standardized test scores are better, graduation rates are better, students' applications and motivation to go on to college. There's an important thing for me to call out here, and that is much of this research is still association. have green, positive outcome. And we don't know a lot about why. We don't know a lot about the causal connections. And that is coming along. I'm hearing that some of the most current research is people are attempting to understand mentally how we respond to views of nature. Endocrine, various gland and the inner chemistry, the inner metabolism of our bodies, coming to understand that. There might be some things with bioaccumulation. I'm hearing about a study being done with lichen, with lichen as an indicator of air quality, and then looking at people's health in relationship to proximity to where these studies are being done with lichens. So we're starting to understand how these things happen. We don't know quite as much about that yet. We get older, we leave school, we make decisions about where we want to live, rent, live, where do we settle? And here's a study that was done, there are others of course, that have looked at crime rates associated with having vegetation. And in this one in particular, it's important to notice that the type of tree, not the type of tree, the size of the tree, there's some difference then in how crime is expressed within these neighborhoods. And I think there again, that's an important thing to keep in mind as we dig in and we get better at planning and we get better at planting our urban forests, is to recognize that the canopy is the first cut of understanding of this resource. But as we dig in and understand more, people appear to relate to trees in different ways and green spaces in different ways. And to understand the secondary characteristics of design will be important as we learn more about health and human response to nature. Here's another example. I noticed that in London, there were not many vacant lots. Likewise, in my city where I live now, Seattle, not many vacant lots. There's a development boom going on. But we know that there's other cities, you may have heard about Detroit in the States, vast areas of vacant lots, houses that have been knocked down for a number of reasons. And so in those cities, what we see that there is some relationship between vacant lot greening, tree planting, generally social involvement, social engagement in those communities, and finding some crime reduction. So here, this might be one of those causal connections, or those reasons why we see green and a positive outcome, is people come together and they work together with regard to green, tree planting, volunteers, citizen science, and in this way, secondary benefits start to happen. Another one, emerald ash borer, and here we see some places. Again, Ohio is a state in the upper Northwest, upper Midwest of the states. This was an interesting natural experiment because I don't know how many of you know the EAB, but I borrowed a prop before I walked in here. And this not so little, but the bug, which is quite little, will then enter these forest areas where there's a preponderance of ash trees, and in a fairly short time then we see the mortality of the trees, and of course because they're hazard trees they have to be removed. So within a short amount of time, that street character is drastically changed. The conditions of that neighborhood, the conditions that people are living in are drastically changed. So accessing, in these places, a variety of places in the upper Midwest, accessing the county health records, this investigation team, again, Jeff Donovan and his colleagues, found that there was a change in cardiovascular and respiratory disease. And it appears that the presence of trees, or in this case, the absence of trees, was a primary link between these two situations. Controlling for demographic, other mortality issues, as well as forest health data. These are some of my favorite studies. I've done some sabbaticals in Japan, and I have been out forest bathing, Shinrin-yoku. And this is not literally taking the bathtub out into the woods. This is immersion, walking, days, hours, and a number of studies. If you Google forest bathing, Japan, there's a whole bunch of studies that have been done, some very good science. And now the scientists from Japan, Korea, and China who have been doing this work are collaborating with others around the world. Northern Europe, a little bit in the United States. But here you see some of the responses of people to these activities. To the point where this compelling evidence, it's convincing enough that the city of Tokyo, to my understanding, is now creating forest bathing opportunities for people who work in the school districts, teachers, and staff. So it becomes a prescribed activity in a vocation, in a profession where there can be a lot of stress. Acknowledge that and intentionally get out into the woods for a certain amount of time, a certain amount each week, in order to experience and to enjoy some of these benefits. All right, continue on. Leisure, life, work. I don't know how the rest of your day goes, but I'm finding I am ever more crouched over that computer. More and more of my time is spent writing, and so I now self-dose. I'm at the desk for about 2 hours. I try to limit myself to 2 hours and then get up and go for a walk. And the best scenario is to go out and walk outdoors in nature, weather permitting. And there's some science, there's some theoretical basis to this, the value of doing this. One is we're hearing more and more that a sedentary lifestyle really brings on the risk of major disease, chronic disease. But in addition to that, it serves our minds well to be out and about as well. So attention restoration theory is an idea forwarded by Rachel and Stephen Kaplan. And so many of us do work at the computer, at the desk, in the building, in the cubicle. And we get tired. We are focusing our attention. We're fending off all sorts of other things that people are talking about, and email and the cell phones, the mobile phones, all of that. And sometimes we just get irritable. We're not so happy with our colleagues, or we just want that quiet place where we can get something done and get away. Or how about a walk in nature, as I attempt to do, and as some of my colleagues try to do. The dean of my school now does walking meetings. Whenever he can, meeting with students and colleagues, we go outdoors and we walk and talk, because he too is starting to recognize this evidence, this research. But here's one study. It was done some time ago, and you can see desk workers with a view of nature, job satisfaction improved, and perhaps if you're there and you're not ill, you're actually a little more productive while you're in the job. There are studies in the workplace about presenteeism, meaning, yes, you're in the chair, yes, you're at the desk, but you're not getting it done. So presenteeism is something that employers are now ever more concerned about. And maybe nature experiences, getting out for a bit, is one way to overcome presenteeism. What are the elements? Again, if we understand this research, if we understand this evidence, and we want to create the effective places where these benefits can happen, we may have to think a little more of the detail of design. And so attention restoration theory, the studies that have generated this idea have found that these are the elements that assist with this compensation or assist with this restoration. One is a sense of being away, that you have a distinct feeling that you've left that place that is so demanding of your attention. And here's the key with nature is soft fascination. What are those things that you can attend to, look at, pay attention to without having to put a lot of effort into it? And I have to tell you right now, those birds are soft fascination for me. I'm just drawn to them here. But things in the texture of foliage, the birds that are in a place, flowers, the annuals, the perennials, creating the full package of soft fascination. An extent that it's large enough where you feel, you don't feel confined, you feel that it is a big enough space to find compatible uses. There are places to sit, there are places to walk, maybe there's a little bit of food service or drinks available in the space. So there are elements that enhance the opportunity to be out in nature and recover and maybe be more productive in the workplace. So we can't do this for everyone, but maybe we can insert a little more of the trees, canopy, and nature more generally into our workplaces. All right, I'm going to step out a little bit, kind of moving along on this cradle to grave idea. We're now at mid-adult, early adult age. And some of these studies you've probably heard about, you may be aware of them. Others, I hope, are new to you. They bring new information, new tools that you might be able to share with others in these discussions about urban forestry. But it's not so easy to find this science because it's being done by people in a variety of disciplines and a variety of journals that frankly are kind of obscure. Some of them, they're very difficult to access. So how do you find that study? Well, here I am to help you out with that. We have been compiling this research, and we now have over 3,000 articles, peer-reviewed pieces, as well as some review materials, reports, and whatnot. And what we've done is to take the articles and prepare them into summaries, topics, different themes, summaries that you can find at Green Cities Good Health. And the Forest Service, the U.S. Forest Service, has been very helpful in sponsoring this, the Urban and Community Forestry Program within the Forest Service. And 3 students in particular, I've had about a half dozen students work with me, but these 3 in particular have really done a heroic effort in getting this writing done. If you go to the site, this is what you will find. There's about a dozen topics here on one side of the screen, and they range from the scale of individuals and nature experience and benefit, work and learning, mental health, healing and therapy, and then they range up to community scale benefits. So crime reduction, transportation, calming, place attachment, and community building, and local economics. So for each of these then, there's a very brief description of what the entire piece is about. Fast facts. If you do want to pull out some bullet points, drop them in newsletters, sales brochures, whatever, they're available. And then there's a longer summary, a longer essay that continues, providing more detail about this information as well as full citations. So what we see here in this body of literature, in this body of science, is not only does nature offer us help or assistance or opportunity for disease prevention, but also health promotion. So it's really a holistic opportunity of addressing the illnesses, some of the most expensive illnesses that we have in our industrialized countries, as well as helping people to not be in those unhealthy situations. So we can now, because we could talk about trees, the environmental services, stormwater, air, climate change, carbon sequestration, but we can also bring this health message to certain partners that may not resonate